Okay, for the first question, again check the requirement first. Will it be subject to Section 27 voluntary disposition in the FIFOs? The consequence is we'll use the market value. So the reason behind is the transaction is below or no market value. And then if this is market value, consequently, they will ask you, like in this question, stamp duty payable. So remember to use your concise mind maps. I have inserted after page 72 the current stamp duty table. So you need to check what is scale to weight. In particular, post 28 February 24, which AVD is tested only. BSD, SSD cancelled already. Then subsequently, you may also be asked about stamping time limits. If it is subject to stamp duty, the document must be stamped within certain time. If this is late by Section 9 of the SDO, penalty will be imposed. Maximum 10 times. Okay? Also, write all these understanding in your mind map, summarize into your mind map. And then final question, will there be any difference by wedding gift? Okay? In actual situation, wedding gift situation is not classified as gift situation, like voluntary disposition in the FIFOs. This will be exempted. However, you need to prove it. How do you prove it? You submit some document to the stamp duty office. To prove it, submission of these documents for proving is called adjudication process. Okay, so these are the basic concepts. So now check the facts. I give you maybe 1 minute to check the facts, how these will be applied to these facts. Okay, this is father's gift to the son. Okay, it is not wedding gift. No exemption. The transaction is below market value. Okay, which is 5 million. Therefore, voluntary disposition in the FIFOs apply. The IRD will charge based on 5 million market value. And this is a residential property. So you check the scale to weight based on the 5 million. Okay? Therefore, you need to bring your stamp duty table. Otherwise, you may not be able to suggest the appropriate duty weight. And then the timing normally is 30 days after execution. Execution means signify the documents. Okay? If this is over 2 months, then 10 times. And this is 3 months late, therefore 10 times penalty, apart from the normal stamp duty at scale 2. If this is wedding gift, so the transaction may be supported with a document declaring that the father is purely giving a wedding gift for the son to get married. Okay, like supporting with marriage certificate, etc. Then this could be exempted. Okay, check the key wording underlined below for the marks involved. It is undervalued, therefore deemed voluntary disposition in the FIFOs. Market value will be used. Then market value is 5 million. You check the scale 2 weights according to the stamp duty table. And this is 2.25. So make sure at home you track your mind map. Okay, the page 72 is attached with a stamp duty table from the IRD. So you know how to apply. And then do the detailed calculation as well. And one more point is that the transaction is carried out with the conveyance at the same time, without any agreement for sale. So there is no so-called $100 against, because the conveyance, there is only one conveyance. And then 30 days is more than 2 months, therefore 3 months more than 2 months, late already. Suppose 30 days after execution, therefore 10 times penalty. Again, make a small calculation to prove your understanding. Final point, the IRD officer in stamp duty we call collector may remit penalty upon request. That is additional marks if you can code this as a suggested point to the client. If marriage is the consideration, this will not be classified as voluntary disposition in the FIFOs, which is your current hot topic. So likely they may mix them together. In this question, you are asked voluntary disposition in the FIFOs. You are asked about the consequence, including the duty calculation and the timing and penalty. You are also asked about which will be exempted from voluntary disposition in the FIFO. One of it is marriage consideration. With proving, we need to adjudicate. That means submission of the application to the IRD. Okay, double check the underlined wording to see any question on this sample on voluntary disposition in the FIFOs. In the examination, that will be the simplest way to write the concise answers already. And the key words are those underlined. You may use your simple English to explain it. Okay, then using the same technique, check the requirement, try to understand the law involved, and then check the facts to plan your answer with reference to the marks allocated for question 2. Question 2 is transfer of shares at new consideration. Question 1 is transfer of property to the son. Okay, here is transfer of shares. So both voluntary disposition in the FIFOs may apply to property or property head 1 or property or shares head 2. Check the requirement. Stamp duty under head 2 fee is actually voluntary disposition in the FIFOs under stock transfer. So as long as this is also low consideration or below market value, you may apply and then use the normal market value to test, which you need to prove your calculation, your understanding by Part B calculation. Okay, normally this could be 0.2% because we have contract notes, including bought note and sold note. Remember, remind yourself, page 72. When you are asked stamp duty, there are 4 steps. 1, about the document. 2, about the duty. If they have more time allocated to you, then you may explain the timing and liable person. Here, only 2 marks, and also they ask the stamp duty payable only. So you may mention the amount and the document should be enough. And then additional document must be submitted if you want to have adjudication is still required because this is without market value. And if this is a bona fide commercial reorganization, then we make use of the market value based on the commercial reorganization. Okay? Basically, the stamp duty will be the same, except that you don't have to do the adjudication. Okay, check the facts before we move on to check the concise answer. I give you 1 minute to refer to the facts here. Okay, this is also a family gift situation, this time to daughter, okay? And the market value should be 10 million. in some real situation in the examination, they may mention 10,000 share out of 1 million share capital. Then you need to calculate the proportion. Okay. However, this time they said all, so you don't need to. The overall is 100% share capital is transferred. So 10 million should be the capital, the market's value involved. You use head-to fee, 0.2% as the calculation based on the 10 million for stamp duty. And then because of the gift situation, you need to do the adjudication process. Okay, check the concise version, especially the authority. First one, Section 27(4), warranted disposition in the FIFOs because it is no consideration. Second one, head-to fee. Then we may charge the contract notes based on the market's value. And then do the calculation 10 million times 0.2%. If the instrument of transfer is to be acted, is 20,005. If they ask you to ignore it, then just based on 20,000. And then additional document required is so-called adjudicated under Section 13. Sometimes adjudication fee is required, but subject to the relevant provisions. Certain transactions may not be required. So either you ignore the adjudication fee, which is not also asked, or you write more concisely adjudication fee of $50 subject to this section. And the last one, if a market's value reorganization is used. This is not a voluntary disposition FIFOs, not head-to fee, but you use head-to-1. And the instrument of transfer head-to-4. So basically the same, but no need for adjudication. So these are the key points for this question. Check the highlighted wording to see if you understand. Another example of adjudication transfer voluntary disposition in the FIFOs for gift. In first question to the son, in the second question to daughter. The first question for residential property. The second question for shares. Okay. Then we try other example. In the first example, we have wedding gift exemption. Is there any other exemption under voluntary disposition in the FIFOs deemed at value? This example is about trust. Okay. Transfer of property to a trustee. Will it be voluntary disposition in the FIFOs? What you need to check, is there any change of beneficial interest? Make sure you understand the key point. Section 27(5) mentioned that if there is no change of beneficial interest, then no stamp duty. Okay? So you check the first paragraph, the wording, is it a change of beneficial interest? If there is a change of beneficial interest, then it is stamp duty is payable. If there is no change of beneficial interest, then you need to do the adjudication to prove it as well. So check the facts now to see is there any change of beneficial interest. You need to check the structure of the transfer. If the trustee, the person in charge of the trust, transfer the property to beneficiary, then there's no change of beneficial interest, because originally the beneficial interest is already with the beneficiary. However, in this situation, the Mrs. Wong actually transfer property to the trustee first. Okay, this is another entity. Mrs. Wong is a legal entity. The trustee, another entity. Okay, then there is a change already. Unless at the end the trustee transfer to the beneficiary 即係受益人 okay, then there's no change. Otherwise there will be a change. If that is the situation here, the original application of section 27(5) is that there's no beneficial interest passes, or there's no change of beneficial interest. However, in this case, does not apply to transfer to a beneficiary by the trustee. Here, the transfer to the trustee is not actable. This is actually a settlement of the transfer. Okay, therefore, beneficial interest does pass from Mrs. Wong to the trust. So, in conclusion, Section 25, Section 5 does not apply. Therefore, they need to pay stamp duty. So, be careful. Don't be misled by the wording trustee, beneficiary, etc. Here, the transaction is from a settler to Mrs. Wong to the trust. So, stamp duty is payable. You need to check the stamp duty table. Okay, market value, scale 2 weights. Adjudication is required whenever a trust transaction, because in the transaction it mentioned no value. You need to do the adjudication, but you need to pay the market value stamp duty. Okay, that is another example of that you may be asked about voluntary disposition in the FIFOs, apart from question 1 wedding gift. Now, another example that may exempt by section 27(5). This is so-called distribution in specie on liquidation. The situation is that the company is actually owned by the original shareholder, Mr. A, in this question. The company is wholly owned by Mr. A. Now, upon liquidation, the property is distributed back. Upon liquidation, transfer the property back to the original shareholder. We can classify it as no change of beneficial interest. If there is no change of beneficial interest, you may apply section 27(5). That is not voluntary disposition in the FIFO, and therefore no stamp duty. Again, adjudication is required. Okay? So apart from question 1, wedding gift, there is also another exemption that voluntary disposition in the FIFOs not actable by section 27(5) through distribution in specie on liquidation. That means transfer back the property to the original shareholder. Check the highlight or bold wording. Here, no stamp duty because no beneficial interest passed. If there is no beneficial interest passed, then this is not a voluntary disposition in the FIFOs. Therefore, you don't have to pay stamp duty. However, you need to make the application for exemption. We call this process called adjudication. Okay, with these 4 examples, you may have quite a lot of application for voluntary disposition in the FIFO section 27.4. If applied, then go to market value, section 27.1. Then you may be asked about stamp duty calculation. After all, you may also be asked about administration like stamping late for penalty in question 1. And then certain situation like question 1, wedding gift. And then this question, section 27.5, distribution in species. Or whether there is only transfer to beneficiary, then there's no change of interest. However, if from settler, original Mrs. Wong, transfer to the trust, then there will be stamp duty. Okay, in summary, if you check the page 5, check on the left-hand side, the topic you may be asked. The details are on the right. Voluntary disposition in the FIFO, basically inadequate consideration. The second one, inadequate consideration like below market value or no transaction value, like gift. Marriage exception, if this is the consideration, that can be accepted as exemptions. Variation date on conveyance, on market value. If this is immovable property, you may apply the scale 2 ways. Therefore, you need a duty table. If this is Hong Kong stock, the relevant authorities had to fee. Stamp duty, 0.2% plus $5 instrument of transfer. If this is no beneficial interest pass exempted, section 27.5. We have example above, like from the trustee to another beneficiary or liquidation of the company. Compulsory education is required in case of such situation. Then miscellaneous details about stamping, like intentional understatement is offense, may be charged on penalty. Late stamping is also required to pay fine penalty. The penalty for late stamping is listed here. In case they ask exactly, then you apply. Like in the question above, this is 3 months, more than 2 months, therefore 10 times. If they don't mention about the timing, but you need to address this, you may mention the maximum is 10 times. Okay, non-stamping, what happens? Refer back to your concise note. That will not be registered in the public authority. That will not be admitted as evidence. It may, like company register, if this is not registered, you cannot get the dividends from the shares. Okay, that's all for hot topic 10 as well. So far, we have covered all the relevant hot topic. Okay, when you go to hot topic 8 and 10, even though they are like China tax or stamp duty, but you focus on for stamp duty voluntary disposition in the FIFOs. For China tax, focus on CIT. Okay, then I draw your attention. We have covered a lot of hot topic related questions. How these are reflected in your past papers and also your mock exam. So if you refer to your hot topic list, just now we cover topic 8 and 10. Then we tried to apply these concepts. You summarize all the notes, okay? After your exercise, the hot topic Q&A, you summarize the key points into your mind maps.